All right, so once you are logged on to HAR and click on that transaction desk icon or link rather, to launch the product, you will land on a page that looks something like this. And as the broker or manager for your company, you have access to all of the transactions that have been created by your agents. So on this particular homepage, that's the focus, is kind of whatever your agents have been up to, so to speak. And you can see I have 4 major widgets, they call them, on my screen. The transactions that were completed or put together in the last 7 days, incomplete checklist items. We'll talk about checklists here in just a moment. Templates that are available to me or created by me, and then also the ability to impersonate agents. If you ever needed to log on as one of your agents to help manage a file or put together forms in a certain transaction or something like that, you can do that at any time. You don't necessarily need to impersonate them. You can just click on the name of their transactions and be able to open it up and work with it from that method as well. This homepage or dashboard is completely customizable. If you click and hold on the title bar of each of those little widgets, you can move them around. You can click the little X if you'd like to remove them. And then up in the very top right corner, it looks like 3 little dots. They call that a stoplight menu. And once you click that, you'll see you have the ability to show widgets. And so you'll get the list of all the different wizards and widgets that are available to you. Anything in blue or green on this bar, you can click and hold and drag it down. The more you begin using the program, the more you're going to learn which widgets would be of benefit to you and which wouldn't. One of the other things that you may have noticed up here in that menu, it says View as Agent. So if you want to switch to being your agent personality and write up your own transactions or something like that, you can switch to the agent view for your own account. Again, you can function just fine as the broker version of yourself. You can still write transactions. It just has more to do with the auto completing of forms. When you, for instance, launch into a listing agreement, it's going to presume to put you as the agent versus the broker when it's deciding where you're going to sign. You can change that and move it around and delete it and have it configure however you want without any trouble at all. So again, just kind of hiding in plain sight up there in that corner. There are a couple little extra features. The little padlock is just to lock your widgets in place. So once you get them the way you like them, you can hit that little lock and close them down. Keep them from moving on you. The wizards, these smaller ones, are little quick start options to do exactly what it says on each of these: create transactions, start an electronic signing, fax documents, email documents, and so forth. So again, you can choose which of these you want to have and where they live. How they end up on your screen, it's totally up to you. So those are kind of the super basics of the dashboard. I'm actually going to jump down into the account settings and setup options that you have. In the upper left corner, there's what they call a hamburger menu, these 3 little lines. I personally call it the pancake menu because it's a really skinny hamburger in my opinion. But if you just click that, it expands that menu so you can see the text descriptions. Some people are icon people, some people are more text people, so just depending on which view you prefer, you can hover on these little icons on the left as well, and it'll tell you what it is. All right, so heading down toward the setup section, as I mentioned, going into our preferences real quickly. So once you click either the gears or the word setup, you'll see preferences at the top of that list. That's to set up your email, username, company information, just double checking that your office address, phone numbers, and so forth are correct. We've already sent what we had in the HAR membership database onto TransactionDesk, and so all of our users are logging in with that same information that we had. But you may need to tweak that or something, and you can contact HAR directly and let them know that if you need to change anything. The email signature section is also fairly important, so if you hadn't already configured your signature, it would be a good idea to set that up. Whenever you email certain transaction forms out, then the signature will be included in that. Not required at all, but again, just a nicety to be able to have your name and phone numbers and emails, the link to the IABS form or consumer protection notice, however you typically configure your signature in email messages, you can do that here. It's pretty utilitarian in that there aren't any special fonts or colors or anything like that, but it will at least provide all that information that they might need in your signature. And then lastly, the branding portion of that section, it's a place where you can upload pictures. So if you have your company logo and you want to go ahead and put that in the system, or your personal photo, you can do that. If you just click on the space, when you haven't uploaded a picture yet, it will say, click here to add photo or something of the like. And then you can just see the specs are there, 120 by 145 for your personal image and 150 by 150 for a company logo. Backing up just a touch toward the top there, that banner that they refer to, again, it tells you here it needs to be 800 by 125 if you choose to have one of those. Basically, this banner is just a graphic that can appear at the top of the email messages that you send out, and also the fax back cover sheet, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we create a transaction. The fax back cover sheets are created automatically for every single transaction. So if a consumer uses a fax machine, but you want to be digital, they can have that paper generated with a special barcode on it that will then allow them to fax it to a special toll-free number. It will then go directly into the transaction that you created. It does that no matter what, every transaction, and it doesn't matter at all if you have a little picture that goes across the top of that. It doesn't change the functionality to have any of these images, but again, just a nicety to have some of those images if you choose to do that. All right, so those are kind of the super basic preferences. Still in the setup menu, I'm just going to click it one more time to back up. You can use your back arrow in the browser and it will be fine to do that as well. So we just came from preferences. About 2/3 the way down that menu are your transaction templates and the checklist manager. And this is really the driving force of the broker side of TransactionDesk. Their intention is that a broker would set up office level templates or packets of forms for their agents, and then those agents would use those templates each time to be sure that they are in compliance, that there are fewer questions about which forms to use when, and things like that. The checklists, as the name insinuates, are checklists of certain tasks or documents that you would want them either to mandatorily include in their transactions or that you're advising them to use. You could, for instance, make it mandatory that the IABS form be a part of every transaction. So you would need them to get that and upload that form and sort of prove that they had that signed in order for them to be able to go on with the rest of the transaction. And again, establishing some sort of broker rules, maybe unless they turn in a complete file with all of the things that you required that were mandatory, they wouldn't get paid or something like that. I've heard a couple of brokerage offices, not as bluntly describing it, but saying that that's their method of business to help them stay, again, in compliance, and just as a means of helping their agents utilize the system to the fullest. Alrighty, so down here where it says transaction templates, you have to start with a template before transactions can be created from it. You have to create a checklist before you can put it in the template. So some of it is a little cart before horse feeling because you have to create one piece before you can create the other piece, yet you've not seen either of those pieces usually. So I'm going to start with a template just because it's the simplest of the two. The checklist can get really involved should you choose to do that. So we'll do kind of two pieces. If you want a template that just has all the forms that they might want to need, that's perfectly fine. If you choose to also then incorporate checklists as a part of those transaction templates, you can add the other piece if you choose to do that. So once you're in that template section, it pretty simply says add on each page, wherever you can add a new thing. And most all the controllers in TransactionDesk are in the upper right portion of the screen. So wherever you see that little plus or the plus and add menu is where you're going to start creating a new one of whatever types of thing whatever section you're in. So here on my screen, you can see I've got a couple of sample templates in there, and kind of, again, simplistically, it shows a single head when it's an agent-only template and 2 heads when it's an office template or a multi-user template. Basically, you as the broker of your office, again, can be the agent version of yourself or the broker version of yourself. You can create templates that only you can access and you can utilize as your own transaction templates, or you can create those office level templates for your agents to use. When you create them, I typically recommend that you name them something really obvious. You can see on mine, I was about as obvious as you could get. My listing template and office buyer template. Again, you can get as specific or as general on these templates as you might want. A listing template, for instance, may include every form that you potentially might ever need on any listing. But it might make more sense to you to create multiple templates. Maybe you want a new construction listing template and a home with lead-based paint template and homes within a mud template. So again, you can create an unlimited number of templates and you can be as specific as you might want to be with those and call them basically whatever you want. Just think in terms of an agent logging in for the first time and trying to pick one of those templates and determine which one's the right one. Just name it something that would make sense and be very descriptive for them to be able to easily choose it. Again, I'm going to go ahead and click add, and then you will see that you have the option for personal or office. You can switch that at any time. So if you wanted to start out building it as a personal template, and then once it's all finished and complete and you're happy with it, then you could switch to an office type, and then your agents would be able to see it and access it. So if you don't want them to get into it until you're completely done with it, just make it a personal one initially and then switch to office. You're, of course, completely fine going with the office version right off the bat if you wanted to do that too. Once you switch to the office version there, you'll see this option comes up, block content from other super users. Super users is a terminology that TransactionDesk uses for all their broker administrative type logins. So if you have an office manager, a compliance officer, or whatever other office staff, you can choose to lock the template so that nobody but you can edit it. Super users otherwise, each super user for every office can edit anything. All super users have full access to what other super users do. Agents can only modify their own things. So again, personal preference there if you want to lock it or not. And then on the name, like I said earlier, call it something that makes perfect sense for anyone who might be wanting to select it later. And also one thing that I recommend, again, kind of in the background where I had a my listing and an office buyer template, I put the words office and my in mine. When the agents are going to select it, or if you're going to use it later, you can't tell that it doesn't have the little graphic like this does with the one-headed person and the two-headed people. It will only just give them text lists of all the template names to choose from. So if you throw the word office or personal or my or something like that into the name, it makes it really obvious which ones are the ones you created for personal use, which ones they created for personal use, and then which ones are the master office templates. So again, just to be kind of super simple about it, I'm going to call this office sample template just for webinar purposes. And then a little further down, the type of transaction, a commercial or residential lease, listing, or purchase. So again, it would be either listing or purchase or whatever you choose there. I'm going to fake list today, so I'll choose that type. And then if you wanted to describe it further, you certainly could do that. Again, I'm being very generic in my title for the webinar today, but it could be office listing template for homes in a mud or anything like that that you wanted. In that case, I wouldn't really need to put a description because my title did it well enough in my opinion. So again, personal preference there. The description's not required, just a name is. And then once you click save and create it, you've got basically kind of an empty folder. And again, you can at any point change the type of template, the name of the template, the kind of transaction that the template's based on. Down a little further toward the bottom, you have those checklists, people or contacts, documents and folders, and then forms. The most simple version of a template is going to be just containing forms. And if you, again, don't want to go into any other detail on those, this will still be a great advantage for your agents having this set up ahead of time. Once you click forms, you'll see nothing until you've added them. And over on the right-hand side, you can see where you would add them. So just click that little plus and it will give you all the libraries, your HAR, TAR, and TREC libraries. And you can just click the name of the library and scroll through the list and find the form that you want. Each form has a little circle next to it, and you just check the circle. As you check circles, I'll just randomly check a few here. You'll notice they kind of stack up in my basket up at the top. So you just find the form you need and check it, and then go find another form that you need, and then go find another. You can use the key term search up here to search by number or by name. So if I start typing 1101, it's going to narrow it down just to the form number or numbers that I've typed in there. And again, I'll just check the circle, it's in the basket, and now I can go find something else. The IABS form is another good one that you might need to know. Information about broker services, list side or sell side. Again, just pick the appropriate version there. And then maybe a seller's disclosure. And if you'll notice on this seller's disclosure notice, there are two versions inside TransactionDesk. The seller's disclosure notice with just the plain simple name of the form there is designed to be emailed, printed by the consumer, filled out by hand. The one that says AuthentiSign one-step process is one that is formatted. TransactionDesk has made it so that consumers can fill it out online, not just electronically sign it. AuthentiSign is their brand name for their electronic signature piece. So every time you see AuthentiSign, that means something that the consumer can fill out online. Again, if you choose that one, the consumer will be able to type it in by hand and complete it all digitally. You can also just email it to them and they won't know the difference. So this one can be used to deliver either way for somebody to fill out by hand or electronically. This one is only designed to be printed or emailed, not filled out online. So again, as you continue to build these and create all of the forms, create the template rather, the way that you would want with all the forms you want, you can click the basket itself to see what's in the basket. You can click the little minus to get rid of something from the basket. So if I hadn't accidentally put the exclusive right to lease, I could just get rid of that easily and go grab the new form that I needed, and it'll be in the basket. And then once you're done, I know there are quite a few more forms to a listing, but I'm just going to move forward with these simple three. Just above the basket is the add button. So you just click add to add all of those forms into the template, and you'll see them down now in the form section. And you can click and hold in this white space and rearrange them. I'm a little OCD-ish, so I personally would want to have that IABS form be the first thing in my packet, so we're sure that gets seen and taken care of and signed. So you just click and hold and drag and drop, rearrange them however you see fit. You can also either use the little stoplight menu on the right-hand side, or just click the name of the form itself to open that form, and then you can pre-fill some of the information. The IABS, or information about brokerage services form, needs your broker name, broker firm name, license numbers, so you can start filling that in if you want, and then it's a part of your template. Once you've pre-filled those things that would be consistently used in every single transaction that included the form, you can just up here in the top portion exit. It's automatically auto-saving for you about every 20 seconds, so you can easily just fill that in and move on to the next form. TransactionDesk is pretty forgiving. It does give you the choice to manually hit save. Again, if you're a little OCD-ish like me, I often will just hit save, though I don't need to. I was going to say it's pretty forgiving about if you type something on one place, it's going to put it somewhere else that it might need it. Now that I've added myself on that one form, the fake broker on the form, it automatically put that person in my contacts. So it's not necessary to add a contact to then have it fill in the form. I can type it on the form and it'll add it to contacts, or vice versa. Also, the IABS form is a little quirky. Just because I put my broker name on that one form doesn't mean it's on the others. That's the only exception to the rule. If I were to fill in the listing agreement first, for instance, it would autofill all of the rest of the forms. The IABS form just kind of lives on an island by itself, since it could be signed and completed by several different other entities. I think it just gets a little confused. So again, I'm just clicking the name of the form here, and you would have to do both the IABS form and then at least one other form to make it auto-populate all the rest of the forms. So again, if I just fill in this information here, pardon me while you watch me do this. I know that's not the most fun part of your day, but I just want to quickly get some info in here so y'all can see how that works. And now that I've typed my email address, it's actually going to auto-populate that throughout the rest of the other forms. So wherever my email is supposed to go, or my office address or broker name, it's done. Because I'm in a template, I'm not going to fill in anything about a seller or anything that would be unique to the individual transactions an agent's going to create later. But I can fill in some basic stuff if I have, a certain commission that I wanted to put in there. Obviously, if I jump to the last page, again, my name and license number would need to go there as the broker. So again, you can just go through that form and pre-fill as much as you might want to, and then you can just simply exit. So at this point, if I were done with my template, any agent that began using it would automatically have my name and license number on all those forms throughout their transaction, as long as they used my template. Right? So looking at the last part here, documents and folders, a little transaction specific verbiage for you. They call forms and documents two different things. Forms are the NAR, HARTAR, and track forms. So anything that I as an agent or a manager would be filling out. A document would be anything else. So if somebody emailed you a PDF attachment, you can pull that into TransactionDesk and it's technically called a document. So it can still be a part of your transaction. AuthentiSign allows you to drag and drop and place signature pieces. So again, if you were emailed something and then your client needs to sign it, you can easily take that PDF, send it through AuthentiSign, and drag and drop where they're supposed to initial or date or sign and send it for signature. I'll briefly show you that here in just a moment when we create a transaction. And then I'll come full circle back here at the end to checklists so that you can see those as well. All right, so that's kind of the super simple basic template. Once you've created those templates, again, they're going to show up in Setup, Transaction Templates, and you can go tweak them, add more, delete them, whatever you might need to do. If you want to delete a template in that section, you just simply click the three dots and hit delete or edit. You can copy as well. So again, my example earlier, if I were doing a listing template and then a listing within a mud and then a listing with lead-based paint, the great majority of those forms might be the same and I just need to add a couple extra. So instead of having to recreate the wheel and put every form in one by one again, I'll just copy the one template, rename it, add or delete a few forms to tweak it, and then I've got a second or third or more templates. Okay, so those are your templates. And just a reminder, if you've got any questions along the way, just use that chat feature to let me know. I know I'm talking pretty fast and we've got a lot to squeeze into this 1 hour. So feel free to ask those questions. But again, I'm going to follow up by email and I'll have my contact information on the screen later if you need to contact me directly off the webinar. All right, so kind of going back to the dashboard, we're going to create a transaction just so you can see how it does work, how the process works, and where those templates come into play. The little speedometer icon there or the text menu called dashboard gets you back to that home screen or our dashboard page. And then again, I have a little wizard for creating a transaction. So that makes that super simple to start that process. The other way that you could do it is go into the transaction desk menu, that second menu. This is not only a list of all of the transactions that your office has created, but you have a little plus or add up there in the upper right. So at any point, you can click and begin a transaction from there. All right, so either method, and we'll launch into the Create a Transaction wizard. Sorry, it's having to think a little extra on me here. There we go. So on the name of a transaction, a consumer will see those names. So be mindful of the fact that whenever anyone's creating a transaction, they should call it something that makes sense to the consumer. And also, they will not see the names of your templates, but they will see the names of your transactions. So that's a good rule of thumb just to be mindful of. And again, not being crazy creative with mine today, I'm just going to call it sample for webinar. And then here are my list of templates. And again, this is what I was trying to talk about earlier. Here's the visual. I don't have the little heads, right? I don't have a single person or a multi-person template. So that's why I use the word office and my in mine. That's my personal choice for my naming convention. So I can tell easily which ones are the office templates and which ones are my personal ones. Once you pick a template, we can't see it right now, but it preloaded or auto pulled in all of those forms that I already put together in the template. You can then import from MLS or tax. If the property's already in MLS, you can just type the MLS number and it'll pull the listing agent, listing broker, the legal, lot block, address, that type of thing. It also pulls in any documents that have been uploaded to MLS. So if that listing agent put a seller's disclosure as one of the docs in MLS, for instance, it pulls into your transaction and is stored in that document section. So you can very easily see, a survey or whatever it might have been that was uploaded to MLS. So that's kind of a nice perk of the import. And also about a third or so of the data that you would type in there manually is imported. Realist tax, similar process. It's just importing from the tax records. So no additional docs or attachments usually on there. It also always defaults to Harris County when you're importing from tax. So you just need to be really mindful of picking the right county. You just pick Fort Bend here, and then where it says has this little magnifying glass, that's to actually perform the tax search. So if you click that, then it allows you to put in your unit, street number, street name, city, state, whatever. It's typically very happy with just a street number and a street name. And then click search tax data, and it will import that. And here is, again, another little circle. Check it if it's the right one. Select to select it as the property for your transaction. And you can see it auto-populated a few things here. And in the forms, we'll see that it imported a good bit more. Again, it's presuming me to be the listing agent. I can be the selling agent or neither or both. But because it's a listing type transaction, it presumed that would be my role. And then if you use the wizard, it's really 5 steps, but only about 3.5 of them do you actually need to do much on. So it's a really short and sweet little wizard. If you hit create, it's now created a folder of sorts with the names, the forms that my broker set up for me in my template, and then it auto-populated what it could from that tax record. So you can see, again, a good bit of that is filled in. In the upper right corner, there is a drop-down menu for the transaction status, and it will always default to open. And then that is something that needs to be manually kept up to date. So if you have an MLS coordinator or a file manager or a person in your office who does that type of MLS status change, they could change it in MLS and then also come to TransactionDesk and do that for the agents. The agents can do it on their own, of course, so it's just up to you, again, how you choose as a broker to have them use the system or enforce certain fields and things like that. It doesn't really affect the transaction itself other than making it a lot easier to find and track and just kind of know what's going on if it's accurately up to date. So for instance, once it went into pending, you just pick pending, and once it's active in MLS, maybe you choose active, but until then it's open. So pretty simple definitions there, pretty intuitive. The property type, of course, is residential, vacant, whatever it might be. This, again, is kind of an organizational piece for you to find it later. Since you're technically responsible for whatever your agents do, finding their files and accessing the information and being able to keep in compliance and track all of those changes and things is important. And this filter of the property type helps you do that. Again, there's a pretty good amount of information down the rest of the page, not a lot that we would fill in up front. The listing price, first mortgages and so forth if you knew those. Next, through the steps of the wizard, again, whatever dates you might know, your offer date or list date or whatever it might be. I'll just fill in a few of these things so we can see world's shortest listing here. On the third step, again, the broker already auto-populated from when I typed manually on the IABS form. And then it also imported the seller of the property for me now as a contact from the tax record. It also knows my broker name, my brokerage name, and then me. So it's filling in all of those contacts. Again, I didn't have to manually add those. It's just happening because I typed them on a form or populated from the tax or MLS. The little plus up in the upper right does let you add other people. So if there's another person that should be a seller, or you want to add in a mortgage person or a title company rep or whatever it might be, they don't necessarily have to be a signee or a party to the transaction to be a contact in the TransactionDesk file. Next, on into step 4, these are our forms. Again, I put those together as a part of the template up front, and I manually filled in or pre-filled some text. And now, in addition to that, I've auto-populated from RealList. So I'll have the broker name and license number and those things that I typed as a part of the template supplemented with what it just imported from the tax record. And we'll look at the forms here in a moment so you can see what it's filled in for you, but at any point you can click the name of the form or edit form and be able to open and see those forms. Clicking on next takes us to the document section. So again, forms would be your HAR, TAR, and TREC forms that you're filling out. Documents would be anything else, PDF attachments or copies of emails or faxes, whatever it might be. Here's the fax back cover sheet I talked about at the beginning. I'm just going to click the name of the form so you can see it. And you can see my banner across the top. So again, if you had that little graphic header image you wanted to put in, wonderful. If you don't have one of those, it certainly does not change how it works at all. So no worries there. You can see the toll-free number and then this kind of barcode-ish, QR code-ish section in the center is specific to this one transaction. So again, if you print this for a consumer, hand it to them or mail it to them, and they can then use their fax machine, send it to the toll-free number, put this cover in front, and then TransactionDesk will know it's a part of this specific transaction, and save you a digital file. It automatically puts it straight into the document section of this sample 4 webinar file. So it's a pretty nice little streamlined process. Consumers don't have to change the technology they're comfortable with, but your agents can still be digital and paperless as much as they might want to with those methods. And there is another add button right here. Perhaps instead of the IABS form, maybe you didn't want to put it in the forms section. Maybe you just want to upload a PDF that has already been pre-filled. So you could click add and upload that as a document. And you can see here you can just upload it from your computer or cloud storage or something like that. And you could put that in there. If you have like a supplemental seller's disclosure, or you wanted company history or whatever it is that's in there as a document, can be accessible to consumers and agents alike. All right, so we're done with the little wizard. I'll click done here toward the top. And now I've got one completed transaction. One other little nicety about TransactionDesk, kind of hiding in plain sight up there in the top right, there's an email upload, it says. Each transaction not only gets that unique fax back cover sheet, but it gets a unique email address. So if I wanted to ask consumers to, or as a manager or broker or an agent, I want to email documents straight to this email address, it will also put them directly into the document section of this one transaction. It will allow you to send pretty much any kind of attachment. And also this is a good way to kind of keep track of email conversations. So maybe after the deal's all done, you come in and forward all the email correspondence related to that transaction to this email, and then the email messages themselves and any attachments that were a part of those emails are all stored in the document section of that transaction. TransactionDesk saves everything online. I think it's for 7 years, so plenty long for you being in compliance and needing to pull the file later. So this just gives you another option for saving all those parts of that transaction and managing it, and allowing you and your agents to be a little more streamlined and organized and just paperless in the end. All right, so now that we have a transaction created and a template used, that's kind of the 101 for management as well as agent use of those. I'm going to go back now to the checklists just to cover those so that you can see how you might enforce a little more management into each transaction. Right now, my agents can use this template or not use the template. It's totally optional to them. And then if I happen to notice they use the template, I can open their transactions and log in whenever I want. So this is kind of the most free-form, most laid-back management style in this scenario. If I go back into setup, there's a couple of different things we can do again to add layers to that. So checklist manager again allows me to set up an unlimited number of checklists. I can have an unlimited number of templates as well. And you can see I tried to be pretty generic in my names there. Let's create a new listing checklist. And again, personal or office level. In this case, I'm going to make it office because I'm going to incorporate it into that office template. So I'm going to call this listing checklist for office. Then I'll easily be able to find it later. Once you save it, again, it's kind of an empty folder initially, and down here you can see there's nothing on it yet, so I need to add items to my checklist. Once you click on that little plus to add things, here's where it can get a little convoluted, but a lot of forethought and forward thinking up front and maybe a good amount of time spent getting it laid out initially can really save you a lot of trouble and time and effort in the end. So if you think about what tasks or documents that you want to have involved in every transaction, in a listing agreement, for instance, documents that would be important to you. And again, sorry about their verbiage switch right here. A document means any kind of thing. It could be a form or a document in this case. So the checklist item is a tangible thing. So if you check document, what would be required or what would be important? Getting the IABS signed, getting your listing agreement signed, making sure the seller completes the seller's disclosure, any MUD notice, all of those things that you would want them to get and have actual tangible proof of having or items in their hand, virtually or actually. So let's say I want to make sure that I get the seller's disclosure signed. Me and my little OCD tendencies there, that capitalization was going to bother me. Okay, so that's the document. So once I set this up, I can incorporate this checklist into my template. I can make this mandatory or not. I would make it mandatory. That way the agent can't not get that seller's disclosure taken care of. And then once they have completed that, either they can send the document or form off to the seller's disclosure by AuthentiSign, link it to the item on the checklist, so when the seller completes it and finishes signing, it automatically sends it to you for review, or they can manually upload it and prove to you that they've done that. So again, another document might be get the IABS form signed, things like that. Tasks could be things that you want them to do, mandatory or not. So on a fake listing, which is what I'm doing today, maybe a task is put a lockbox on the house, advertise in whatever media that you're wanting, post it to social media, whatever thing that you want them to do, where there won't necessarily really be a tangible thing like a document. So place lockbox on house might be the task, but I may not make that mandatory because not every house gets a lockbox. So again, you've got the flexibility there. On your tasks, you've got the task tab there at the top. You can tie those tasks to certain transaction dates also. So my little fake task over there was place the lockbox on the home, and I want to tie that, for instance, maybe to the listing date. So I want to put that on the house on the listing date. That's when I want that item to be taken care of, or a certain number of days on, before, or after the list date. And then down here, you can choose to get a reminder about those tasks as well. So again, if I choose before, list date, offer date, expiration date, closing date, whatever it might be, depending on whatever the task is, and then you can have it due certain days before or after or on that actual date. And then last but not least, there's the option to assign. And if you want to assign that task to a certain role, in this case, putting the lockbox on the front door might be the listing agent's responsibility. So I'll pick that person and hit the little plus to add them in there as who I'm assigning that task to. But maybe I also want to assign that to the seller so they know what's going to happen. Maybe they wanted to be there when it happened, something like that. So you can assign that task to multiple kinds of people in the transaction. Again, just depending on whatever the task was in the scenario. I know it's a little far-fetched to have such a formal thing for the lockbox, but it can really be helpful. Like I say, you can get as micromanagery as you want and as very, very, very detailed as you might want on all of these, just depending on how you want to configure your own office. I'm going to save this, and then I'm also going to go right back in and create a document since I didn't save the document initially. We'll do sign by seller's disclosure, and then I want it to be sent to my broker to be reviewed after that task is done. I want to send it to my broker to prove I've done it. All right. So again, you as the broker are setting these up. If you don't want to keep getting every single solitary document from them, just simply don't check that box. And let me just, sorry about that, make sure I marked it as mandatory as well. Alrighty, so then you can see the little M's in front of the checklist mean it's a mandatory thing. No M, it's not mandatory. All right, so again, you can just go and go and go and go and go. Unlimited number of items can be added to your checklist and an unlimited number of templates. You can create checklists that are separate from templates. Again, sorry and you're welcome. You have tons of choices on how you can use these and how specific you might want to be or general you might want to be. Just kind of backing into my template now. Don't forget setup and then transaction templates. And then the sample template I made today, I then want to add in that checklist. And here's a list of every checklist that I have set up. This is the one I just created. And so I'll add that. And as you'll see, you can have multiple checklists within a template and potentially drive yourself crazy with how super hyper organized you are. So at any rate, check the circle or circles by the checklists, and now that's a part of that template. So if an agent goes back through that same process we did before, create a transaction, use a template, now the checklist is a part of that. So when they are creating their transactions, they're going to have a progress bar on each of their transactions showing them what they need to finish and what they haven't yet and all of that. And again, sorry, it's gotten just a little slow on me here. I've clicked on TransactionDesk, that second menu item down on the left, just so it can hopefully load my transactions. There we go. So initially when I created that sample for webinar, there was no checklist. So that's why there's no progress bar with that particular transaction. The other ones you can see, one has all been taken care of. The others have tasks that are outstanding. 0% complete. You might see 50% or 75 or whatever it might be. The little widget on your homepage, remember, shows you incomplete checklist items. So you can very quickly scroll through and see Susie Q hasn't done 3 things on her Maple transaction. I should touch base with her and see what's going on with that. So it helps you kind of manage those. Last but not least, you can apply a template and or a checklist after the fact. So let's say an agent created the template of the transaction already like I did, but you hadn't gotten a chance to get that checklist in there yet, but you want them to use it. You can easily reapply a template. And again, if it will just load this page for me, I'll be glad to show that to you. All right, so the transaction, you can click the name either here or in that TransactionDesk section. Either one opens up that transaction, and we pick up right where we left off. Down the right-hand side are all the different parts, so the forms and docs and the checklists and so forth. Right now, what I need to do is come up here to the top to this main menu, kind of near where we did our email address, but Apply Template, being about halfway down that menu. If I choose Apply Template, pick the template that I just updated, it will then incorporate that checklist as a part of that transaction as well. It didn't really mess anything up. It just kind of reset it. It used the same forms and all of those things. And you can see right here, the completed IABS form needs to be uploaded to prove I've done it. So if that agent gets a paper copy, has something emailed, faxed, uses Authentisign, whatever it might be, they can just click and upload that document. I'll just submit something real quickly. Just pretending this is an IABS. That checklist item's done, and the broker just got an email to let them know they need to just take note of the fact that I've submitted that and approved that. You as the broker get your email, and you click a little button that says accept or reject on those forms after you've reviewed it. So if they sent the IABS form but you noticed a field was empty, you just simply reject it, type a little message back to your agent saying this isn't filled out quite correctly, fix paragraph 7, line 12, or whatever it is, and then they'll be able to continue that process back and forth. Again, I know this gets to be really detailed, really kind of convoluted, especially trying to squeeze it into an hour-long webinar. But I hope that kind of gives you a jump start, a kind of a preview of the items. You can see now I've got a progress bar on that one. Nothing's done just yet because it's sitting waiting for my broker. My fake broker is needing to approve my fake IABS form, so no progress made yet. Last couple of things here for you as brokers. You do have a few broker tools in that middle section there. As soon as my internet catches up to us, hopefully in 6 minutes or less, given that we're about to the end of our webinar time. Again, sorry, it's kind of grayed out over here on the left, but it's about in the center. It says Broker Tools. It looks a little bit like a piece of paper with a magnifying glass in front of it. That's what you would click to get to those broker tools. You can actually, what I've done now is I've made a template, and they could choose or not choose to use it. I've made those checklists. Some of the items were mandatory and so forth. I can actually do a couple of different things in this broker tools section. Again, for my visual learners like me, here's the menu I mentioned, broker tools in the center. The review document section is where I can go to review them. So not only did you get the email saying Marilyn Maxwell sent you this form to click and reject or approve, but you can come right here and you can see everything that's waiting on your approval, and pretty easily just be able to click a button and approve it. All right, so right here where it says review document, accept, reject, so forth is where you would click and review that. And again, there were potentially multiple items on that checklist from that agent, so they may all be done. And demo is one agent, Marilyn Maxwell is the other agent. I do a lot of talking to myself in the program. Back at broker tools, transaction transfer, you can actually transfer transactions from one agent to the other. If you've got an agent leaving your company, for instance, you want to keep their transactions, they belong to the brokerage firm, you can transfer it back to yourself or to another agent, or whatever the reason might be, you can transfer those. Office transactions, again, is just a list of that transaction section, similar to TransactionDesk. Agents, Shows you all the agents in your office. It's a good idea just to look through this and double check that there aren't people associated with your broker code that, you know, are no longer with your company or whatever it might be. There are a few on mine you can see here with stars. Those are my super users. So again, my office administrator types. So if you've got somebody with a star there that you don't want to have administrative privileges, just contact me directly and we can work that out for you. I'm going to jump to office settings now, and we can change some of that. They don't really have to use the template. I hope they will kind of scenario. You can actually make those templates mandatory. Their verbiage is force agents. That sounds a little harsh, but on this section, if you choose yes, then when your agents log in, they're presented immediately. As soon as they click create a transaction, they're automatically presented a list of the templates to pick from. So it's guiding them directly into those templates that you create for them and lay out for them. The other option that you have kind of back up at the top is to allow agents to delete a transaction or not. The default is allowing them to delete them, but a lot of brokers don't want them doing that. If you turn off that ability to delete, that again can help you with your compliance issues and things like that. If they're creating transactions and closing deals and things like that that you're not aware of, that can be a problem. So preventing them from deleting those can be a good option as well. And then show vendors, that's a very seldom used feature. I think you can actually go into setup again and create a vendor list. So if you wanted to put together a list of appraisers, tile guys, pool guys, whatever it is, you can then share that list with everybody in your office just as kind of a reference or a resource. And then the task reminders, any of those tasks on the checklists that are undone, you could get a summary at the end of the day. So again, if 5 of your 12 agents create transactions, it'll show you who did, who's done what, which tasks are still outstanding. And if you notice each day for weeks and weeks and weeks that somebody isn't doing a task, you can easily know who to follow up with and intervene and so forth. So that's all in Broker Tools. The reports that they have are pretty utilitarian. Your transaction reports just show you who has created transactions and what those transactions are. So again, just to kind of filter and find things by keywords down here. Part of a street address or something. So again, if you needed to virtually pull a file a year later and for whatever reason access that, you can easily do that with these reports. You can also see in that report section who's using the program and who isn't. So again, if you've made it sort of mandatory that your office always turns in their files through the system, you can see who is and isn't logging in and doing that. Tasks are related to your checklists. And call logs, again, another fairly seldom used feature. Just as it sounds, it's related to call logs. So I'm going to just open my transaction one last time, if it'll let me. Whenever you create a transaction, each individual can create a call log. It's a very manual. Click add, type an entry that says, on this day, I called him. We talked about a price change. He said no. Click save. So it's just like a little journal of individual calls, a log of calls. So just clicking on the name of the transaction to open it, you'll see way down in the bottom right corner right here, it says call logs. And your little add to put in who it was, what happened, information about it, and that's it. And then you would just simply click add to write another one. So again, I don't know that they would use it all that often, but you could, and you can mark it as dealt with. So it's just kind of a tracking or journaling of call correspondence. It's nice to have that written, tangible documentation of those calls within each transaction. So again, even if you pull it up 2 years later, you can see on, May the 12th, she called, they had this conversation, here was the topic. All right, so that again brings us to the end. It's kind of the 101 of broker specific functions with a little agent creating a transaction feature in there, so you could see the circle of how those checklists and templates work together. And that's probably the most important part of the whole process. If you get those templates put together, and especially if you put the checklists in there with certain mandatory items or just foolproof items in the checklists, really, the leeway that they have, or the ability for them to make mistakes or forget a form or those types of things, is really reduced. So risk management is a great checklist, is a great risk management method. I actually, last little sample here for you, I took the TAR residential checklist and I copied every one of those things off of that checklist one by one, created a new item for it. Once it loads, you'll be able to see it here. I wish they had a buyer checklist and a seller checklist and a lease and a landlord and a whatever scenario, because this is a hugely significant or extensive list. If you pull up that TAR 1415, if you're not already familiar with it, that will show you some good items, and you could customize it, kind of tweak it. The IABS is relevant to other types of transactions. Instead of a completed listing agreement, you would want a completed offer form, a 1-to-4 family. So you could use this as sort of a foundation or guideline for checklist items, documents, and tasks that you wanted to set up for other kinds of transactions as well. And again, you can see here, you can go on and on and on and make it as long or short a checklist as you might want to. All right, so really, that brings me to the end of the presentation for you today. I didn't ever see any questions pop up, so again, if you have any, if you want to submit those with the chat right now, I'm glad to take those. Also, you're more than welcome to email or call me directly. I'm the point person here at HAR for the Transaction Desk product, so anytime you need anything, the more you use it, of course, the more questions you'll have, but you're more than welcome to always reach out should you need anything. I really appreciate you spending an hour of your time with me today, and I hope that answered some questions or at least gave you a little insight if you didn't already have some. Again, feel free to let me know if you need something, and have a great rest of your afternoon.